everyone welcome Neha Manaktala, who's Head of Climate Tech Investments and Innovation at JP Morgan. Neha, nice to see you. Jay Mallick, who's Managing Director of Intralink, and Sujatha, who is Vice President Invest India, who I believe is joining us virtually. I'm hoping. Yes, good. I'm told that is the case, so let me sit here. Nice to see you both, and let me know, guys, when UG is able to join us. But Neha, let me start with you here. Really interesting there to hear from Greg about some of the work that's been done, particularly around sort of tech in this space. Give me a sense of where that innovation is coming from, and crucially, I guess, where the money is coming from to fund that innovation.
Thank you. With climate, where the money's coming from, there's a broad sort of spectrum of investors, and I think it goes back to what do we actually mean by climate tech businesses. Climate tech is companies that address mitigation, adaptation, and resilient solutions for climate. And within that, you have a range of solutions that are everything from software to AI solutions to hardware and deep tech. So as we look at that framework, you have quite different types of companies within that. Software and AI, it mirrors largely what you see in the wider technology landscape. So there's a lot of venture capital money over there. There's a lot of growth capital and private equity. It's deep tech and hardware where you start to see more challenging because the business model is quite different. And so the capital needs are much higher. The number of rounds that are required to reach just break even is much higher. And they tend to mirror more of infrastructure businesses in some way than, say, a classic software business. So the way we evaluate the funding sources, the capital needs are quite different for hardware and deep tech, and the framework we apply is different. Within climate, we often hear about the missing middle, which is that you have quite a lot of companies which are at the pilot stage, which will attract grants and VC funding in order to get those pilots off the ground. The challenge is moving from that to first-of-a-kind projects, which is where you see a lot of companies not able to raise. And there's a lot of funding then again at the late stage for infrastructure, commercially scalable businesses. So how do you fund the missing middle where there's a lot of challenge in actually making it commercially viable? We have to come up with innovative solutions, and we're starting to see some of that happen. There's a mix of blended finance, project finance solutions, debt solutions. There is obviously equity capital in there. There is catalytic capital that's starting to come in. And it is through those blend of instruments that you start to see unlock some of the capital that is needed. And so the range of capital sources is different. How you think about the structure of the business, whether you're raising it at the holdco or the project finance level. Again, these are complex for early businesses, but the right investors, especially climate tech, domain, deep knowledge investors will know how to guide companies on that bit. And the last point I'll make is there are the strategic investors like us and others have a very important role to play as well.
Yeah, and Jay, you're nodding along. I mean, you're one of those guides, aren't you? You help firms, in the tech space to scale up from innovation to large-scale deployment. You do that in the tech space. Talk to me about the clean tech space and how that's changed and what you're able to do to help those firms scale.
Absolutely, thank you. And so prior to my time at Intralink, I was actually with a clean tech and clean energy investor called Foresight Group, where we were predominantly investing in renewables and energy transition solutions, but we saw the sort of theory of change around sustainability stretching beyond energy into other resource systems, food production in particular. And so we were one of the first backers of sort of vertical farming businesses in the UK, which are a good example of the kind of solutions Neha was talking about there is climate, deep tech. And I remember actually when we were started speaking to that business, they were just looking to raise venture capital, and we sat down with them. We understood their technology stack, what they're looking to do, the business model they had, the kind of customers they were going for, and we said actually, well, what you need the capital for is not business growth, but it's to build your first commercial scale facility. Have you guys understood that maybe there are other capital sources out there that are more capital efficient, more effective, and that's where infrastructure equity, sort of comes in. So the way you structure Of course, the investment is important, but it's also the support that you give those businesses as they grow, as they develop in managing the risks that are relevant to them and their business at that time. So, for example, a vertical farming business that's been predominantly involved in developing a technology stack and growing plants, doesn't actually understand what it takes to build a large infrastructure facility. And so stepping in with project financing experience, project development support, that was a real value add that we were able to bring to their business. And then as that facility got away, the business continued to grow and it delivered impact. It also continued to raise funding in more traditional sort of venture forms, which would facilitate the growth of the team. There's an example of how capital sources can be diversified and broadened, and I think that needs to happen in economies like India now.
Yeah, and you touched on that balance as well, and I'm hoping, Sujatha, I'm hoping you can hear us, and if you can, very welcome to you joining us there online. We know that small firms, startups, they're nimble. They have the power for innovation. But we know that it's the big firms, the legacy firms that have the deepest pockets to roll that out. How do we make sure we get that balance right, do you think?
So thank you for the question. And then just wanted to start. India, as all of us know, is the most populous country in the world and also the one of the fastest growing economies. This offers a very compelling case study for climate ambition in action. As we all know, the world has a finite budget of CO2 emissions to maintain the temperature range, and we are the third largest emitter of CO2, wherein our real GDP is again growing at around 6.5% per annum. And our 2047 ambition is to make ourselves a developed country, which is almost 8 times the current GDP, and also in terms of our per capita income growing at 9 times. So that means we also have very unique challenge, which is to balance growth with the climate ambition and our commitment of net zero by 2070 and other commitments of 2030 where we want to achieve our NDCs, our renewable energy target. So all these things give us a unique canvas to balance growth, to balance economic aspiration, to balance our own consumerism, and also the aspirations of many startups and large companies. So we need to navigate very carefully while also not curtailing the innovation and the advancement ecosystem. We also offer a very diverse climate and geography. So that means any solution which is successful in India can be scaled up across global south. The large domestic market is very attractive for startups getting into climate tech because climate tech is now no more any sector agnostic. It is cutting across sectors. So that means there is a good problem to solve, a good case study to make, but also there is a challenge that how do we ensure that while these startups are nimble and successful, how do we also keep them within the boundaries and also not get greedy or lose the traction what they are built on. So I would simply put what we do at Invest India and also by the government of India under a broad 4-point framework under the acronym I would say as GIFT GIFT. So to ensure this, one is the G in GIFT is the government initiatives, which is primarily focused on how do we enable startups and ensure that they deliver the problem that they are trying to solve and also become scalable and also stay relevant in the long run. So there are many such schemes, and the primary one I want to talk about is the Startup India initiative. We are the third largest startup ecosystem in the world with almost 100 plus unicorns currently in the ecosystem. Amongst the 150,000 registered, government registered startups, there are almost around 4,000 clean tech startups. Now, when we talk about these clean tech startups, we have unique support system for them so that their efforts are not only aim to solve India's problem, but also how do we drive them into, how do we make India as a laboratory of low carbon innovation and also a hub for cost effective climate solutions. So, one is the various government initiatives, which is seed funding, grant, support, and mentoring system through the Atal Innovation Mission. The second is that how do we create a cohesive investment and funding ecosystem along with mentoring at various stage. So we see a very increased significant increase in venture capital and private equity investments into clean tech startups. Innovative financing solutions like green bonds, impact investing are also emerging to support early stage startups. So with various ecosystem coming together, the main challenge is how do they stay relevant, how do we showcase success stories, but also showcase that it is okay to fail, but then it is okay to get up and run. So some of the successful startup stories from India is one is Renew Power, which is one of the largest renewable energy IPPs in India, which is currently listed NASDAQ. The second I would like to mention is Ether Energy, which is an electric scooter startup which is transforming urban mobility, which is need for countries such as India. And also, I'm sure that it is a model which can be replicated across global south and also developed countries. So there are many such startups which are in the ecosystem which are showcased. There is a paying forward system where we are able to nurture new and young startups which is coming. So that, there again, I would say a fostering system, which is currently available, which is in collaboration with research institutions and large corporates, where the startups are helping to solve real world problems. So what we are trying to do is that give them a problem and let the startups come up with solutions which can solve real world problems. So that is what we are looking at. And the fourth, I would say, is technological advancement in terms of how startups are using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analytics to develop scalable and efficient solutions for clean energy, waste management, and sustainable agriculture. So, global investors and governments are also expected to play a critical role by co investing, de risking innovation, and fostering cross border collaboration, especially the current India UK FTA.
New firms that are getting into this space, I wonder, Neha, how you identify the ones that are truly scalable, the ones that can have the biggest difference, and the ones that, frankly, are not just greenwashing. You know, they have the power to actually make a real difference. Just talk to me about how you identify those.
It's a challenge. It's very crowded, like just in the engineered carbon removal space where we have done quite a lot of activity, our own offset purchasing. There must be like 300-400 companies just there, right? So it's about identifying, benchmarking, doing your due diligence. But there's various things you also look for. Aside from the classic metrics you look for in startups and technology companies, you look for offtake agreements, advanced market commitments, what's the signal there, how are these companies positioned with their technology versus others. There are also emerging, say, MRV technologies to help you actually figure out greenwashing and not what is the quality, of the offsets being offered, standards. And there's an emerging market standards which are starting to happen in these industries. So it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of knowledge, and climate does require quite a lot of that deep knowledge to invest and participate in.
Yeah, and just a similar question to you, Joe, because there's these billion-dollar unicorns are now emerging. And it's easy for us to kind of pay a lot of attention to them with those sorts of valuations. But how do you make sure that these firms actually are delivering on their promise and they're not just chasing a valuation?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think you look for some of the fundamentals, right? So you look for, have they got the right approach to capital, like we discussed? Have they got a business model where profitability and impact are, fundamentally interlinked, and profitability isn't coming despite impact; it's coming because of impact. Have they got, the right levels of engagement across the industry with trade bodies, regulators, the likes? And also, I think there's there will be a lot of focus on energy, and rightly so, but there need to be kind of more facilitative programs now to look beyond the energy problems and look into areas like nature-based solutions, food and agriculture tech. I think there is with India's prowess in the agriculture sector, I think the next wave of clean green unicorns from India will emerge in that space. So how do we make sure that we have the right support, mentorship, guidance, for them? They have the right task forces in place. We've got the UK-India Offshore Wind Task Force, for example, which is a great program, provides a lot of structured support to businesses in that. But it now needs to broaden beyond energy. So I think we have the right models. We understand why businesses have worked and why they failed. We just need to work more closely together across the corridor now to support the next wave of unicorns.
Jay, Neha, Yuji, thank you so much for being with us.